The cold metal floor beneath her was the only constant in Lily's life now. She curled up in the corner of her small cell, her silvery skin giving off a faint blue glow that barely lit the darkness around her. 3 cycles had passed since the Ravagers had destroyed everything she knew and loved. The holding cell was bare except for a thin sleeping mat and a small bowl of nutrient paste that her captors pushed through the slot twice each day. The Starborn didn't need much to survive, but even by those standards, this was barely enough to keep her alive. Lily's natural glow dimmed as she heard heavy footsteps approaching her cell. The door slid open with a harsh metallic screech, and 2 Ravagers entered. Their gray, scaled skin and yellow eyes had become a source of terror for her. The taller one, whom others called Boss, clicked his sharp teeth together. A sound she had learned meant trouble was coming. "Get up, healer," Boss growled, his universal translator making his words harsh and mechanical. "We have workers who need fixing." Lily slowly rose to her feet, her long, silvery hair falling around her face like a curtain. The Ravagers had learned early on that her species possessed natural healing abilities. Their touch could accelerate cell regeneration and cure most injuries. It was this gift that had kept her alive, while the rest of her colony had been slaughtered. The shorter Ravager grabbed her arm roughly, his claws digging into her delicate skin. Lily didn't resist. She had learned that resistance only brought more pain. They marched her through the dark corridors of the massive ship called Dark Horizon. Other crew members they passed barely gave them a glance. The sight of a captive Starborn being dragged to the medical bay had become routine. The medical bay was a stark contrast to the rest of the ship. While most areas were dark and grimy, this room was brightly lit and clean. It had to be. This was where the Ravagers brought their injured after their brutal raids on other ships and colonies. Today, there were 3 injured raiders on the medical beds. One had severe plasma burns across his chest, another had a crushed leg, and the third was unconscious with head trauma. Boss shoved Lily toward the first patient. "Fix them," he ordered, "and remember what happens if you try anything stupid." Lily nodded silently. She placed her hands on the first Ravager's chest, closing her eyes in concentration. Her skin began to glow brighter, the blue light pulsing gently as she channeled her healing energy into the wounds. The burned tissue began to regenerate, new skin forming over the damaged areas. The process drained her significantly, but she wasn't allowed to rest. As soon as the first patient was healed, she was pushed toward the second, then the third. By the time she finished healing all 3 raiders, her glow had dimmed to almost nothing, and she could barely stand. "Back to your cell," Boss grunted, seemingly satisfied with her work. As they dragged her back through the corridors, Lily caught a glimpse through one of the observation windows. The vast expanse of space stretched out before her, countless stars twinkling in the distance. Somewhere out there was freedom, but it seemed as unreachable as those distant stars. Back in her cell, Lily collapsed onto her sleeping mat. Her body ached from the energy expenditure, but it was her spirit that hurt the most. Among her people, healing was considered a sacred gift, meant to be shared freely with those in need. Now it was being twisted into a tool for those who only brought pain and destruction. As she drifted into an exhausted sleep, Lily's thoughts turned to her home, the beautiful crystal cities of her colony, the harmonious songs of her people, the peaceful life they had lived. A single tear rolled down her cheek, glowing faintly before falling to the cold metal floor. She didn't know that tomorrow would bring something different, something that would change everything. She didn't know that help would come from the most unexpected source, a species that the Ravagers considered primitive but had proven time and time again to be anything but. Tomorrow, she would meet a human. The alarms on the Dark Horizon blared to life, their harsh sound echoing through every corridor. Lily lifted her head from her sleeping mat, watching as Ravagers rushed past her cell with weapons drawn. Something unusual was happening. Through the small window in her cell door, she caught fragments of conversations. Human vessel, star wanderer, valuable cargo. She had heard of humans before, but had never seen one. Her people's stories described them as an odd species, young, unpredictable, but surprisingly resilient. The commotion continued for what felt like hours until heavy footsteps approached her cell. The door slid open, and Boss entered, but this time he wasn't alone. Behind him stood a creature Lily had never seen before, a human. He was shorter than the Ravagers, with light brown skin and dark hair. Unlike the scaled gray skin of her captors, his was smooth. But what caught her attention were his eyes, warm brown and filled with an intensity she hadn't seen before. He wore simple clothes, dark pants, and a blue jacket with many pockets, now somewhat torn from rough handling. "Your new cellmate," Boss announced with cruel amusement. "Try not to waste your healing on this one. He's only temporary." With that, he shoved the human inside and slammed the door shut. The human steadied himself and immediately scanned the cell, taking in every detail with quick, practiced movements. When his eyes fell on Lily, they widened slightly at her glowing appearance, but he showed no fear. "I'm Jack," he said quietly, keeping his distance to avoid frightening her. "I'm a medic. Well, was a medic. Now I'm just a traitor. Or was, until these guys decided to crash my party." His voice was calm, almost casual, as if being captured by space pirates was an everyday occurrence. Lily watched him carefully. She had never been this close to a human before. "I am Lily," she whispered, her voice rough from disuse. "Of the Starborn." Jack nodded, recognition flickering across his face. "I've heard of your people. Peaceful. Healers." He sat down against the wall opposite her, respecting her space. "I'm sorry you're in here." Before Lily could respond, the cell door opened again. Two Ravagers entered, pointing their weapons at Jack. "Boss wants to see what you know about your cargo," one growled. Jack stood slowly, raising his hands. "Well, I'm an open book, though I usually prefer dinner first before sharing my trade secrets." Despite his light tone, Lily saw his muscles tense, ready for anything. As they led him away, he glanced back at Lily with a look that somehow made her feel less alone. She watched through the window as they marched him down the corridor, noticing how he walked with purpose, his eyes constantly moving, observing everything. Hours passed before they brought him back. He was limping slightly, with a cut above his eye, but his spirit seemed unbroken. The moment the guards left, he sat down and began examining his injuries. "They're not very good at asking questions," he said with a slight smile, wincing as he touched the cut. "I've had worse from training exercises." Lily moved closer, hesitant but concerned. I can help," she offered, her hands already beginning to glow. Jack watched in fascination as she gently placed her hands near his injuries. The soft blue light pulsed, and his cuts began to heal. "That's incredible," he whispered. "Thank you." When she finished, Lily swayed slightly from the effort. Jack quickly steadied her, his touch gentle, so different from the rough handling she was used to. "They force you to heal them, don't they?" he asked quietly, anger flickering in his eyes as he helped her back to her corner. Lily nodded, drawing her knees to her chest. "It is all I am to them. A tool." Jack's jaw tightened. "Well," he said, his voice low and determined, "that's going to change." He looked around the cell, his eyes calculating. "I don't plan on staying here long, and when I leave, you're coming with me." For the first time in 3 cycles, Lily felt something she had almost forgotten: hope. 3 days passed since Jack's arrival, and life on the dark horizon had fallen into a new routine. The Ravagers would come twice daily, sometimes taking Lily to heal their wounded, other times taking Jack for questioning about his cargo. But in between these moments, something was changing. Jack spent his time watching the guards, learning their patterns. He noticed how they changed shifts, how many walked each corridor, and which ones were more careless than others. Most importantly, he watched how they treated Lily. "You're healing," he said one quiet evening, keeping his voice low. It takes a lot out of you, doesn't it? Lily nodded, her glow dimmer than usual after a particularly demanding healing session. Each time I heal, I give a part of my energy to them. Without proper rest and food, it becomes harder. Jack's face darkened with anger, but his voice remained gentle. They're killing you slowly, he said. You're not meant to heal this much without recovery time. He reached into one of his jacket's hidden pockets and pulled out something small and wrapped in foil. Here, he said, offering it to her. I managed to keep this hidden. It's a protein bar. Real food, not that paste they've been feeding you. Lily took the bar with trembling hands. But you need this too. Jack shook his head, smiling. I'm not the one using life energy to heal people. Eat it when they're not watching. You need your strength. As Lily carefully hid the food, Jack moved closer to the cell door, listening to the guards outside. The cargo they're so interested in, he whispered. Medical supplies, but not just any supplies. Experimental regeneration technology. Not as good as your healing, but enough to help injured soldiers in the field. Lily's eyes widened. That's why they keep questioning you. Yes, Jack nodded. They think I know how to operate it. Truth is, I was just transporting it. But his eyes got that calculating look again. I've learned a lot watching you heal. The way your energy flows, how you focus it. It's not so different from some of our medical theories. Over the next few days, Jack began teaching Lily small things, how to conserve her energy while healing, how to appear weak while keeping some strength in reserve. In return, she told him about her people, their peaceful colonies and their healing arts. During one healing session, while Lily worked on an injured ravager, Jack watched from the corner where they kept him under guard. He noticed how the guards paid less attention when she was healing, focused more on their prisoner than their slave. That evening, back in their cell, Jack shared his observations. They trust you'll keep healing because they think they've broken your spirit, he said. But they haven't, have they? They just couldn't see your strength. Lily looked at her hands, the gentle glow pulsing slightly stronger. I never thought of it as strength. Healing was always about helping others. And that's exactly what makes it powerful, Jack said. Your people help others because you choose to, not because you're forced to. There's real strength in that choice. He moved closer, speaking even more quietly. I've found a way off this ship, he said. There's a maintenance shaft near the medical bay. During shift changes, it's barely guarded. We'd need about 10 minutes to reach the hangar from there. Lily felt her heart race. But how would we get past the guards? The security systems? Jack smiled. Remember those medical supplies they're so interested in? I've seen where they're storing them, and I know exactly how to use them to create one hell of a distraction. For the first time, Lily felt herself smile too. It was small, barely noticeable, but it was real. When? She asked. Soon, Jack replied, his eyes serious. But first, you need to get stronger. Keep eating when you can, rest when possible. And most importantly, he added, don't let them see any change in you. Let them think they've won. As they fell silent, hearing guards approach for their evening check, Lily realized something had changed within her. The spark of hope Jack had given her wasn't just a desperate wish anymore. It was becoming a plan. And for the first time since her capture, she allowed herself to imagine freedom. The day everything changed started like any other on the dark horizon. But this time, when the guards came for Lily, something was different. Boss wasn't alone. He was accompanied by the ship's commander, a massive ravager with cybernetic implants covering half his face. Our leader is injured, Boss announced, his yellow eyes gleaming with unusual intensity. You will heal him completely, or there will be consequences. Jack, watching from their cell, caught Lily's eye as they took her away. His face showed concern. They both knew she wasn't at full strength. He had been sharing his food with her, but yesterday had been particularly demanding, with 6 healing sessions that had left her drained. In the medical bay, Lily saw their leader lying on the main table. His chest had a massive wound, likely from some kind of energy weapon. The injury was deep, reaching vital organs. It would take enormous energy to heal. "Begin," the commander ordered, his cybernetic eye glowing red. Lily placed her hands over the wound, summoning her healing energy. Her glow brightened as she pushed her power into the injury. The damaged tissue began to heal, but she could feel her strength fading quickly. "Faster," Boss demanded, shoving her forward. She tried harder, pushing more energy into the healing. The wound was closing, but black spots were dancing in her vision. Her legs began to shake. "I said faster." Boss struck her across the face, sending her stumbling. Lily caught herself on the medical table, her hands trembling. She tried to continue healing, but her power was nearly depleted. The commander's wound was only half healed. "Useless creature." Boss grabbed her by the throat. "You're holding back. I know you can heal more than this." "I can't," Lily gasped. "Too tired. Need rest." The commander sat up, his partially healed wound seeping blood. "If she won't heal properly, make her learn." What happened next was a blur of pain. Boss threw her against the wall, his claws leaving deep scratches across her arm. Another guard kicked her as she tried to stand. Through her pain, she heard the commander's cold voice. "Teaching moments require an audience. Bring the human." Minutes later, they dragged Jack into the medical bay. His eyes widened when he saw Lily on the floor, silver blood dripping from her wounds. "Watch carefully, human," Boss sneered. "This is what happens to tools that don't work properly." He raised his hand for another strike. "Stop." Jack's voice cut through the room like a blade. "You idiots don't even understand what you're doing wrong." Everyone, even the commander, paused at his outburst. "What did you say?" Boss turned toward him. "You're burning out your best resource," Jack said, his voice steady but filled with controlled anger. "Starborn healing isn't unlimited. It's like a battery. You drain it too fast, too often, it stops working. Maybe permanently." The commander's cybernetic eye whirred as he focused on Jack. "Explain." "I'm a medic. I studied xenobiology. Starborn healers need recovery time between major healings. Force them beyond their limits, you break them. Then you have nothing." Jack's eyes never left Lily as he spoke. "Give her 8 hours rest, proper food. She could heal 10 times what she can now." There was a long pause as the commander considered this. Finally, he spoke. "Take them both back to their cell. The healer gets 8 hours. Then we test this theory." As they were marched back to their cell, Jack managed to walk close to Lily, supporting her subtly. Once they were alone, he immediately tore strips from his jacket to bandage her wounds. "I'm sorry," Lily whispered, her voice weak. "I failed." "No," Jack said firmly, his hands gentle as he treated her injuries. "You didn't fail. They failed. And they just showed us exactly why we need to get out of here now." His eyes had a dangerous glint she hadn't seen before. "Rest for 1 hour. Just one. Then we're leaving." "But how?" Jack's face was grim as he finished bandaging her wounds. "They just showed their whole command staff exactly where they keep their most valuable assets, and now we know their leader is injured and vulnerable." He looked at the cell door. "Sometimes the breaking point is exactly what you need to break free." For the first time, Lily saw not just determination in Jack's eyes, but something that made even her tired spirit stir. The look of a warrior ready for battle. 1 hour passed like a heartbeat. Lily had managed a short rest, her glow slightly stronger but still dim. Jack spent that time working quietly, using the medical knowledge from watching her heal to prepare for what was coming. "Remember what I told you about the maintenance shaft?" Jack whispered, checking the corridor through the small window. "When I give the signal, you run there. Don't stop, don't look back." "But the guards," Lily started. "Leave them to me." Jack pulled out something small from his boot, a tiny circuit board he'd managed to steal during one of his interrogations. This is from their security system. When connected to the right power source, it'll do something interesting." The sound of approaching footsteps made them fall silent. The cell door opened, and Boss stood there with 2 guards. "Time's up," he growled. "The commander wants to see if the human's theory about rest works." As they were let out, Jack stumbled, bumping into one of the guards. His hand moved quickly, placing the stolen circuit board into a power junction on the guard's belt. Nobody noticed. They walked through the corridors toward the medical bay. Jack counted their steps, knowing exactly how far they were from the maintenance shaft he discovered. 50 steps, 40, 30. Suddenly, he stopped walking. "You know what's funny?" he said loudly. "Move," Boss ordered, shoving him. "What's funny," Jack continued, "is how you never checked my military background." He smiled. "I wasn't just a medic. I was a combat medic." Before Boss could react, alarms blared throughout the ship. The circuit board had done its job, triggering a cascade of false security alerts across multiple sectors. In the confusion, Jack moved like lightning. He grabbed the nearest guard's weapon, using the larger alien's weight against him in a swift combat move. The guard crashed into Boss, sending them both stumbling. "Now," Jack shouted to Lily. "Run." Lily didn't hesitate. She sprinted toward the maintenance shaft entrance, her heart pounding. Behind her, she heard the sounds of fighting, of Jack holding off the guards. The shaft entrance was exactly where Jack had said it would be. She pulled it open, her hands trembling. Looking back, she saw Jack running toward her, having somehow managed to get past the guards. Inside, he yelled, reaching her, "Quick." They crawled into the narrow shaft just as more guards arrived. Jack pulled the entrance shut behind them, using the stolen weapon to weld it closed. "Keep moving," he urged, his breathing heavy. "The hangar is 3 levels down." They crawled through the dark shaft, guided only by Lily's faint glow. The ship's alarms continued to blare, and they could hear chaos erupting throughout the vessel. "Your circuit board," Lily whispered as they moved. "What did it do?" "Triggered every security alert possible," Jack explained, pride in his voice. "Fire warnings, hull breaches, intruder alerts, all false, but they'll keep them busy." They reached the end of the shaft near the hangar. Jack peered through the grating, checking the area. 2 guards, he whispered. "Better than I hoped. The rest must be responding to the alerts." He looked at Lily. "Can you make your glow brighter? Just for a moment." Lily nodded, summoning what energy she had left. Her glow suddenly intensified, filling the shaft with bright blue light. Jack kicked the grating open. The guards, startled by the sudden light, were momentarily blinded. That moment was all Jack needed. He burst from the shaft, taking them down with quick, precise strikes. "The small transport ship," he said, pointing to a vessel near the hangar's edge. "That's our way out." They ran across the hangar floor, hearing shouts and footsteps approaching. Jack reached the ship first, quickly working to override its security. The hangar doors began to close. Lily looked back in terror, seeing more guards pouring in. "Got it," Jack called, the ship's doors sliding open. He pulled Lily inside just as weapons fire began hitting the hull. The ship's engines roared to life. Jack's hands flew over the controls, his combat pilot training taking over. They lifted off, shooting toward the rapidly closing hangar doors. "Hold on," he shouted. The ship squeezed through the gap just before the doors slammed shut. They burst into open space, leaving the dark horizon behind. Lily stared out the window, watching their prison shrink into the distance. Her hand found Jack's shoulder, and she felt him trembling slightly. From adrenaline or relief, she wasn't sure. "We did it," she whispered, her voice full of wonder. "We're free." Jack smiled, plotting a course away from the Ravager ship. "We're not safe yet," he said. "But we will be. I promise." Red warning lights flashed across their stolen ship's controls. Jack's hands moved fast over the control panel as 3 Ravager fighter ships appeared behind them. "They're gaining on us," Jack said, his eyes fixed on the radar screen. He turned the ship sharply, avoiding a burst of weapons fire that lit up the space around them. "Lily, I need you to watch that screen on your right. It shows our shield power." Lily nodded, trying to keep her hands from shaking as she watched the numbers. Another blast hit their ship, making everything shake violently. The shield power dropped quickly. "Shields at 40%. She called out, remembering Jack's earlier instructions. "Press the blue button. Now," Jack ordered, making another sharp turn. The ship's lights dimmed as power moved to strengthen their shields. Just in time, as another blast hit them. Through the front window, Lily saw something that made her heart stop. A massive field of asteroids floating ahead of them. Rocks of all sizes filled the space, some as big as small moons. "Perfect," Jack smiled, which confused Lily. How could this dangerous field be good news? "Those big Ravager ships can't follow us in there. Even their fighters will have trouble." As they entered the asteroid field, Lily understood his plan. Their small transport ship could move between the rocks much easier than the larger fighters. Jack flew with incredible skill, weaving between asteroids that seemed to barely miss them. Behind them, the Ravager ships tried to follow. Their shots became less accurate as they struggled to aim while dodging the floating rocks. One fighter got too close to a spinning asteroid and exploded in a bright flash. "One down," Jack said, not slowing their pace. 2 more to go. They dove deeper into the field. Lily felt her stomach turn as they spun around a particularly large asteroid, barely missing its cratered surface. The remaining Ravager ships fell further behind, clearly struggling with the tight space. How did you learn to fly like this?" Lily asked, gripping her seat tightly. "Years of practice," Jack replied, his focus never wavering. "Running cargo through dangerous routes teaches you quick. Plus, military training helps." A second explosion lit up their rear view. Another fighter had crashed. The last Ravager ship finally turned back, unwilling to risk the same fate. "They'll try to go around," Jack explained, checking their fuel levels. "We need to hide until they pass." He spotted a deep crater in one of the larger asteroids and carefully guided their ship inside. In the darkness of their hiding spot, lit only by Lily's soft glow, they waited. The radar showed the last Ravager ship circling the asteroid field, searching for them. "You're hurt." Lily noticed blood on Jack's arm from their escape. She reached out to heal him. "Save your strength." He tried to stop her, but she shook her head. "Please," she said quietly. "Let me help the one who helped me." As she healed his wound, Jack kept watching the radar. Finally, the last dot of the Ravager ship disappeared, following a false trail he had created. "Why?" Lily asked softly. "Why did you risk so much to save me?" Jack was quiet for a moment. "Because it was right," he said simply. "When you see someone suffering, you help. That's what makes us human." After making sure the way was clear, Jack started their engines again. They left their hiding place, taking a route opposite to where the Ravager ship had gone. "There's a human space station 6 hours from here," he said, setting their course. "The Ravagers won't follow us there. Too many human warships protect it." Lily looked out at the stars, finally feeling safe. "Thank you," she whispered, her glow brightening slightly with emotion. Jack smiled, keeping his eyes ahead. "We're almost there," he said. "Almost home." The human space station, Hope Point, appeared before them like a shining beacon in the darkness. Its massive structure sparkled with thousands of lights, and ships of various sizes moved in and out of its many docking bays. "Welcome to safety," Jack said, guiding their stolen transport toward the station. His voice was tired but relieved. They had been flying for 6 hours straight, taking indirect routes to avoid any pursuing Ravager ships. The station's communication system crackled to life. "Unidentified vessel, state your purpose and registration." "This is Jack Miller, former Earth Defense Force medic. ID number 247 Alpha 9. Jack responded clearly, requesting emergency docking. I have a rescued starborn refugee with me. We escaped from Ravager captivity. There was a short pause. Confirmed, Medic Miller. Proceed to emergency dock 7. Security and medical teams are standing by. As they approached the docking bay, Lily's hands trembled in her lap. What will happen now? She asked quietly. Nothing bad, Jack assured her. The station's security will want to hear our story, and the medical team will check us both. But you're safe here. The humans have strong laws protecting refugees, especially those who have escaped slavery. Their ship landed smoothly in the docking bay. Through the window, Lily could see a team of humans waiting, some in security uniforms, others in medical white. None of them carried the cruel weapons she had grown used to seeing with the Ravagers. The ship's door opened with a soft hiss. A medical officer stepped forward first, her hands raised to show she meant no harm. I'm Dr. Reed, she said gently. May I check you both for injuries? Lily looked at Jack, who nodded encouragingly. It's okay, he said. Show them what the Ravagers did. It will help build a case against them. The next few hours passed in a blur of kind faces and gentle hands. The medical team treated Lily's remaining injuries, while security officers recorded their story. Jack stayed nearby the whole time, refusing to leave until he was sure Lily was being well cared for. The Ravagers violated multiple galactic laws, the security chief explained during their debriefing. Slavery, torture, forced medical procedures. These are serious crimes. Your testimony will help us build a stronger case against them. Later that evening, in a comfortable room in the station's refugee quarter, Lily sat by a large window, watching the stars. Her room was warm and clean, with a soft bed and real food. It felt almost unreal after months of cold metal floors and nutrient paste. There was a knock at her door. Jack entered, looking refreshed after getting cleaned up and changed into new clothes. How are you feeling? He asked, sitting in a chair near her. Strange, Lily admitted. Free, but uncertain. I don't know what happens next. Jack smiled. I have news about that. The station authorities contacted your people. There's a starborn settlement 3 systems away. They're sending a ship to bring you home, if that's what you want. Lily's glow brightened with joy, then dimmed slightly. And you? What will you do? Well, Jack leaned back in his chair. The station offered me a job. They need experienced medics who understand different species. Plus, he grinned, someone needs to teach their medical staff what I learned about starborn healing techniques. You would stay here? Lily asked, hope in her voice. This station is on the major trade route between human space and starborn territories, Jack explained. Your people's ships stop here often. You could visit, maybe even work here yourself someday, teaching humans about healing arts. Lily looked out at the stars again, but this time she saw not just distant lights, but possibilities. I would like that, she said softly, to turn what was used to hurt into something that helps others. That's the spirit. Jack stood up, heading to the door. Get some rest. Tomorrow's the first day of your new life. As the door closed behind him, Lily touched the window, her fingertips leaving small glowing prints that slowly faded. She had been chained, abused and broken, but a human's compassion had changed everything. Now she had the chance to help change things for others. Outside the window, the endless expanse of space stretched out before her, but for the first time in many months, Lily felt like she was exactly where she belonged.